talk about debt versus GDP, Mr. Steinman. Can you explain that to us?
I can
Your
only say it's very bad.
It's very bad.
Look, remember I've said in the past that our debt to GDP ratio is really nothing. All those people that bought government bonds, that invested in government debt, they don't want that money back. Now I can see your eyes going, wow, why did they put the money in there? And this is what one has to understand about the capital market or the debt market or government bonds, government debt instruments. Call it what you want, it's all the same thing. The investors in the capital market do not want their capital back. They are interested in the yield, what they get. In other words, the interest the government has to pay on that debt instrument that they've issued, that bond that they've sold. And this is why I'm saying that if government debt is 60%, 65%, it's academic. I think South Africa's government debt is 80%. The United States government debt is under 20% of GDP. All the countries in Europe are above 100%. The Japanese government's debt to GDP ratio is 224%. It means that if they start paying off all the loans, the bonds that they've issued this year, it'll take them 224 years before they paid off the last one, provided they did not issue new debt instruments in the meantime. So this is a very guarded or balanced statement if I say that our debt is really nothing. And this is where the whole issue of base effect becomes very interesting, but also very important. Interesting more than just academically interesting, It becomes practically interesting because the way that you measure it has an impact on perceptions. And again, this is now sort of a vague statement, but let me explain. Our government debt currently is somewhere between 62 and 64% of GDP at the last measurement. But GDP, just like the waves in the sea, just like the base that you choose to calculate inflation on, just like the way that you measure your Facebook followers, doesn't stand still. It grows all the time. Some years it grows faster and some years it grows slower, but what we call nominal growth, you remember I mentioned that earlier, nominal growth continues regardless of whether the GDP growth is 5%, which is very good, or only 1%, which is very bad. It still gets bigger and bigger and bigger. What becomes important is not how you measure it, but how you compare it. It means that if the debt grows at a certain rate, let's say between 6 and 8 billion Namibia dollar in a year, that's a fairly constant. And we've got historical facts, or historically, this is more or less what we've been growing at. If the GDP, on the other hand, grows at 19, 20, 21 billion. Can you see that difference? The debt is growing at, let's make it easy, 6 billion a year. The GDP is growing at 20 billion a year, the two nominal values. So anybody who looks at these two figures will realize the GDP is growing much faster than the debt. So this is again where base effect on both counts come into it. In other words, if you say that the economy is going to grow, or if you project, if you forecast that the economy is going to grow 3.5% this year, and the inflation is 3.5%, you see that your actual growth is very little. But what is important is that the economy does not stop growing. Even in 2009, when the first preliminary figures in 2010 indicated that the economy is actually contracted, afterwards it came out it didn't. It it grew by 0.1%. But it was still growing. Very slow, but the nice word, base effect. It continued. It looked like we were going downhill, but we were not. It was still growing, but very slow. Why? Because of base effect.
And that is a wrap for us. Thank you so much for that explanation. And unfortunately, we have also come to the end of our talks for the year 2025. So this will be our last talk until we meet again next year in the year 2026. Any last words from you, Mr. Steinman?
Yeah, Elsabe, I want to thank the audience. I want to thank the young people that every now and then ask me stuff. And you don't realize it, but because we do 3 sessions in every talk, there are on our YouTube channel, we now have more than 360 different items, and it's actually quite interesting to go back, especially if you go back to when the economic times were difficult, to listen what you and I said about it. And then I think to myself, who's this guy? He knows what he's talking about. But that's all that I want to say for this year.
And we would also like to say thank you to Dikide Hangiro, that is of course our producer. So thank you so much for the patience that you've had with myself and of course Mr. Daniel Steinman. And from me, Elsabe Timinyani, I wish you a Merry Christmas and a blessed 2026.